Okay, I'll begin with the title of the show, which is Terra Cognita with a question mark. The reason to have that title is to look at something with which we think we are familiar, which is the colonial encounter, and to ask whether we really know it all that well. Because it's usually seen as a very simple power inequation with colonizing power and the colonized population. But what is much more interesting to me when I think about colonialism is the various complicities and collaborations that involved. In what way did the colonized participate in empire? In what way did they reassert their dignity? How did the gaze of the West regard the East? Or how did the Indian gaze conversely return that compliment? How was the West looked at? Just as you have an Orientalist imagination, you also have an Occidentalist imagination. Yeah? And I wanted to set this in the horizon of print modernity, because that's actually, for me, it's an important horizon for how we construct ourselves in the present. Even what we like to think of as the highly mediatized environment today, it might be electronic today, but it has its origins in print. So that's why the date in the subtitle is 1556. That's when the printing press first arrives in Goa, and in fact in Asia for the first time, the Western style printing press. So what does that set off? There's a whole history of cartography, which is one strand here. What does the map mean? How do fantasy and science intersect in the making of maps? And how do maps help us to imagine territory or belonging or location or empire? So that's one set of questions. Another set of questions has to do with the kind of visual history that we glean from engravings and lithographs and chromolithographs, or the pages of journals or albums or encyclopedias. These are great repositories of history and knowledge. But what are the kinds of subtexts that they have? What do they encode? I mean, is knowledge neutral? That's another set of questions. A third set of questions has to do with how printmaking has been seen as a part of modern Indian art or not. So which is why I've retrieved what I think of as a lost history of the Zal Praxis exhibitions of printmaking in the early 90s. So that's a third part of the exhibition. And the fourth part is a photographic installation by Baiju Parthan of the Abbe Ferreira statue, which stands right outside the Idalkang. So it was a way of blurring the line between inside and outside, thinking of how we construct our sense of a neighborhood. And also, what is important to me is that this exhibition, Terra Cognita, is set in what used to be the Viceroy's office, when this was the center of the colonial administration. And this neighborhood actually traverses different lines of global finance, empire, transnational trade. And there's a relationship between the Palacio Idalkang and the Mamai Kamath house that stands across the road from it. So one of the things that the exhibition does is also to reactivate these memories of neighborhood and of buildings, and to help us to think back before a building that seems to be dead, and to think about how buildings can be repositories of memories that we've lost, and how we can retrieve ourselves from that amnesia. So in a way, this exhibition is reactivating something that is spectral. There are phantom memories here. They come to life. So from that point of view, the exhibition is also an instrument of research.
I have a question. Every time colonization has its impact on art,
Yep.
and colonization has its perks as well as its disadvantages.
Yeah.
So for an artist, whether it's you
Sure.
today or any other artist who's probably mapped colonization and its impact, you try to make a statement to measure whether it's had a good impact more or a bad impact more. Like, is there any way to do it? Just make it very objective.
No, it's not about good or bad. It's about looking at the diverse effects of the colonial encounter. And like you said, there were some positive outcomes, some negative outcomes. Of course, colonization is always a brutal process, but by default, it produced a whole range of other things. New forms of knowledge, new forms of exploration, new collaborations, and things that just crossed borders. I mean, a lot of things that we think, a lot of food that we think of as Indian actually is South American. It wouldn't have been in India without the Portuguese, without transnational trade. The potato, the tomato, the amaranth, red peppers, chilies. I mean, this quintessential Bombay food called the vada pav It would have been impossible without the Portuguese. Wouldn't have had the power and wouldn't have had the potato to make the word albert. So, it's a way of thinking that to what we regard as our authentic identity. You realize that actually it's made up of very diverse sources. Kind of restores a certain perspective on how diverse we all actually are.